Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collins Guitars and Mandolins, each and every one built from the sound up in Austin, Texas. Hi, this is Matt, and you're listening to Bluegrass Jam Along, the podcast for anyone and everyone who loves bluegrass. Hi everybody, welcome back to Bluegrass Jam Along. This is your Bluegrass Briefing for February 2026. And before we kick things off, I just wanted to say a big thank you to the team at Collins Guitars who are continuing to sponsor this podcast for another year. They've been really solid supporters of Bluegrass Jam Along for quite some time now. They're great people making great instruments, and it is a pleasure to work with them. Particular thanks to Joe and to Nully, but to all the team at Collins. Thanks guys, I really appreciate your support. Moving on to podcast news. So if you've not heard the last few episodes, last couple of bits have been really interesting. I had a chat with Dave Cinco about how hearing that first Grisman Quintet record shaped his life, and also his kind of general philosophy and approach to sort of capturing sound and audio engineering, which was really interesting to hear how that has kind of run through the thread of stuff he's done ever since then. And he has been involved in some astonishing music with people like Chris Thiele, Edgar Meyer, Sam Bush, long list of great projects he's worked on. So yeah, that was fascinating. Have a listen to that if you missed it. I also chatted to Tony Trischka about the kind of bluegrass string band scene in and around New York in the 70s, because talked quite a bit about Grisman and the Bay Area last year, and talked about Baylor's Drive record with Chris Eldridge a couple of years ago, and that Nashville sort of 80s, 90s scene is really interesting. But I hadn't really explored that early 70s thing, and there's so much fascinating stuff in there. So go and have a listen to that as well. If you know about that, you'll find that interesting. If you don't know, I'm sure you will find that fascinating. Just talking about some of the people that came out of that scene and how they went on to influence string band music in the 70s and 80s. Lots of interviews coming up this year, piecing together some things now. Got some new stuff, got some guests coming back to talk about favourite records, going to have a couple of themed things going on. Lots to announce. I'll let you know about that in due course. But for now, let's crack on and get on with this Bluegrass Briefing. And the first section is Church Street News, the news and announcements. And there are a few bits to rattle through this month. First up, Chris Thiele's Acoustic Camp, which is happening this year at Tarrytown in New York. As always, chock full of great acoustic music, workshops, amazing performances, lots of great stuff. Chris and Punch Brothers, usual people will be there, but also this year Edgar Meyer, Michael Daves, Sarah Jaros will be there. Extraordinary few days of music making. I'll stick a link in the show notes if you want to go and check that out, but that looks fantastic. Chris Thiele's Acoustic Camp. Tony Trischka has a New York banjo night that involves Tony, Baylor Fleck, Steve Martin, Nora Brown, a band including Michael Daves, Brittany Hass and Jared Engel, and this is happening at New York Symphony Space on Thursday, March the 12th, 2026. Again, I'll put a link in the show notes to that so you can go and check out tickets. But yeah, it's in March and it's Tony Trischka's New York Banjo Night. Looks really cool. Fiddle stuff. Bruce Molsky and Daryl Anger have Bruce and Daryl's Great Big Fiddle Hang, which is a collaboration with Freshgrass, and it's happening in June in North Adams, Massachusetts. It involves the two of them as well as Jenna Moynihan and guitarist Stash Weisslach. And it's a week of exploration into roots, fiddle and beyond. It's described as a 4-day deep dive into instrumental skills, exploring new repertoire, improvising, arranging solo and group music. Most useful for intermediate to advanced string players and guitarists. That's Bruce and Daryl's Great Big Fiddle Hang in June. Go and check that out, link in the show notes as well. Quite a bit of kind of camps and educational stuff in this one. Also wanted to give a shout out to Sore Fingers, the UK Bluegrass Camp, which has been running for years. They do an Easter camp every year and an October weekend, and the Easter camp is coming up April 6th to 10th. They've moved location. They've been in one place for a while, and they've moved to a kind of new and improved location in Long Sutton, which is in Hampshire, in the beautiful south England countryside that I know really well. And it's just a really cool week. It's what you'd expect from kind of a bluegrass camp, I guess. But they fly over a load of American tutors to teach people in the UK. And it's not just the UK. There's lots of people come from around Europe as well. And it's quite a big deal in the European bluegrass scene. And this year, they've got Tony Trishka and Ned Luberecki teaching banjo. They've got Michael Daves and Ross Martin teaching guitar. They've got Becky Buller teaching fiddle. They've got Mike Compton and Jacob Jolliffe teaching mandolin. Stephen Mogens teaching singing. There are also courses for bass, dobro, ukulele, songwriting, lots of different things going on there. Fascinating bunch of people there. And I've not been to one of the full Easter weeks. I've been to the October weekend they do. And it's just great to be immersed in all of that. It's a really kind of fun, unique kind of camp, and wanted to give them a shout out because they've been going for a long time, and they've really put a lot of work into new venue, kind of mixing things up this year. And so if you want to check that out and go and book yourself a place, and also if you're over in Europe and these kind of things are a bit harder to come by, it's a really cool chance to get together with some other bluegrass people. So yeah, Sore Fingers Easter Bluegrass Camp. I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. And the final couple of bits in the news and announcements bit. Rocky Grass is happening July 24th to 26th in Lyons, Colorado. Headline acts include basically a list of my favourite string band performers: Punch Brothers, I'm With Her, Del McCoury, Sam Bush, Tim O'Brien. Also Michael Daves and Jacob Jolliffe are going to be doing their duo thing there. Lots of cool stuff. Link in the show notes for full lineup and tickets. But yeah, Rocky Grass, July in Lyons, Colorado. And final bit, just wanted to give a shout out to I'm With Her, because they didn't just win a Grammy. Last week they won 2 Grammys. They won the Best Folk Album and Best American Roots Song. And I love this record, Wild and Clear and Blue. It is one of my favourite records of the last few years. So I was delighted to see them win a couple of awards for it. Awards aren't the be all and end all, but it's nice to get recognition for those things. And it increases interest and awareness and all that stuff. And so I'm delighted for them. Well done to I'm With Her for their 2 Grammys. So yeah, quick recap. It's lots of events and camps this time round. So Chris Thiele's Acoustic Camp, Tony Trishka's New York Banjo Night, Bruce and Daryl's Great Big Fiddle Hang, the Sore Fingers Camp over here in the UK, Rocky Grass, and yeah, just congratulations to I'm With Her. That is the news. Let us move on to the new releases, which is the section we call The Grass is New. First bit is Bryan Sutton and Billy Strings. They did a live album last year, Live at the Legion, which I absolutely love. But Bryan's got a record coming out, which is basically volume 2 of Not Too Far From the Tree, which turns 20 this year. And he's got a second volume coming out with a bunch of duets with kind of next generation pickers and all sorts of stuff. There's been some singles from that already we've chatted about. Billy and Bryan have got a song called The Devil Went Down to Deep Gap, which is a bit of a take on The Devil Went Down to Georgia, but it's a tribute to Doc Watson. The single is out, it's on all the streamers, but there's also a really cool animated video, and I'll stick a link in the show notes. Go and watch that, that's great. Heard some of those tracks, all sounds great. I'm really looking forward to the album when it comes. Not Too Far From the Tree is one of my favourites, so it'd be nice to hear kind of a fresh take on that kind of concept. Yeah, go and check that out, have a watch. Della Mae have a new album out called Magic Accident, which is really cool. I'll stick a link in the show notes so you can go and buy that as well. Also, Tony Trishka, we mentioned earlier, we had on the podcast a couple of years ago when Earl Jam came out. There's a volume 2 of Earl Jam, which is coming out in March, and I'll stick a link where you can go and pre-order that. But there's also a single off that, which is Tony and Billy Strings, their version of Gentle on My Mind, which is great. So yes, there's that. And finally, Alistair Fraser and Natalie Haas. I mentioned this last month, but they've got a new album out called Meridians, which is just wonderful. So I'll put a link in the show notes where you can go and check that out as well. So yeah, the new releases this time round, the Bryan Sutton and Billy Strings, Devil Went Down to Deep Gap. Della Mae's new record, Magic Accident. Tony Trishka and Billy Strings, Gentle on My Mind from Earl Jam 2, which is coming soon. And Alistair Fraser and Natalie Haas's album Meridians. Lots of great stuff there. Do go and check them out. They're all great. Next up is Scroll On Buddy. regulars will know, Scroll On Buddy is just where I've found something on social media or somewhere else and decided to share it with you. Not strictly bluegrass related, but Willie Nelson's country music album is getting a re-release on vinyl from Craft Recordings, also on CD and a remastered download. It's coming on February the 27th. It's an album that was produced by T-Bone Burnett, and it includes Ronnie McCory and Stuart Duncan on it, and it's just a bunch of great versions of Willie Nelson doing sort of classic country songs, and those Craft reissues are always an interesting thing. I will stick a link in the show notes so you can find out more about that and go and pre-order it. But yeah, I'll be able to listen to that one for sure. And the final bit is just in my ears this week, what I've been listening to. And I've been listening to the Alistair Fraser and Natalie Hash record, Meridians, a lot, and really loving that. That is really cool. I've also been listening to, and it's not bluegrass related, but there's a folk singer, English folk singer called June Tabor, who's been around since the 70s, and I've known of her and known the name and just never really listened to anything. And I discovered a track on a compilation, really liked it, and went to check the album out. And the album's called Ashore, and I think it's probably 15 years old now, but it's June Tabor singing a bunch of songs that are all related to the sea, and it's just extraordinary. I didn't know her stuff, and I'm now going down a complete rabbit hole of enjoying that. She's got such a deep, timeless, kind of unmelodramatic way of delivering these songs that is really, really powerful, with pretty simple backing often, piano, a bit of accordion. It's not kind of big, and yet somehow it's so expansive and cinematic and beautiful. I've just been getting totally lost in that album called Ashore by June Tabor, if anybody's interested in something folky. That is it for this week. All the usual stuff applies. bluegrassjamalong.com for more info, chord sheets, links to all the episodes, links to all the backing tracks, all that stuff. I will see you next time. Have a great week and happy picking. Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collings Guitars and Mandolins, each and every one built from the sound up in Austin, Texas.